Friday, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome. Look, obviously, you probably look straight away and you think, hang on a second, this doesn't look like the usual Friday get up. Well, you're quite right. It's not, because I'm in the rather splendid company of Longy. He's joined us. How are you, Neil?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Phil. Good to be here. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, great. Thank you very much indeed. Now, just in case you are wondering what has happened to poor Russell, don't panic. It's all good. This is perfectly planned. You probably have heard from shows earlier in the week that Russ is taking a very well-earned break whilst he goes about the wondrous task that is moving home. So I'm afraid you're stuck with Longy and me for the next hour. So hopefully that will
maybe not, because Russ did say that he might jump in.
Oh, did he now? Oh, right. Well, he didn't tell me that bit, so I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah, thought I'd better share that with you.
Clearly, communication is communication is a bit broken. But anyway,
ironic when we work in the radio business.
I know, the total irony, but anyway, Robert Van Buren has jumped in straight away to say hello to both you and me, and hello, Robert. Thank you very much indeed. Sen Monroe also jumps on to say good day, everybody. Sen, a very good day to you as well. Well, look, okay, so the point of this show is, as you well know, is that we're just a bit lighter hearted on a Friday, because obviously during the week some very heavy topics are covered, and it is important that we have what Russ, I believe, would describe as a safe space in order to, or no, he describes it as a non-judgmental space. That's the one where we can just simply chat a bit, relax, and possibly even sort of think ahead towards the weekend, where later on our very own screen queen herself, Chantal Rickards OBE, will be here to tell us about a couple of ideas that she'll have for what's coming up on the box.
And she always has some fantastic recommendations.
Absolutely, always worth a listen to. Now, actually, Longy, this is one for you, actually, because last night I was actually in the rather splendid company of Chantal and a couple of hundred others, because we went to the launch of the National Foundation for Retired Service Animals. And it was a blooming marvellous event. It took place at Christie's in central London. So very swanky do, very nice indeed. And it got me thinking about maybe this could be a little subject for today. And that is the effect that animals have on us. And you'll forgive me, I don't know this. Are you an animal person at all?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the effect of what?
The effect that animals can have on us, the positive effect that animals can have on our well-being. And I'm just sort of wondering whether or not, actually, bearing in mind, I haven't told you about this beforehand, so I apologize. But are you an animal person yourself, Longy?
Not that I'm an avid animal lover, but I don't dislike them.
Okay, well, no, we can work with that. That's good.
Certainly wouldn't harm them, but I'm kind of middle of the road. But I do recognise their therapeutic potential.
Yes, I know several animals who are middle of the road, but sadly they don't have much for pulse. Paul Claridge has chimed in and said, good afternoon, Phil, Neil, and everyone else. I'm currently sitting in a pub in Putney, it was right for some, with a lovely view of the river before I start my shift in the DIY shop later this afternoon. Oh, good on you, Paul. I didn't know you were working in a DIY shop. That's good. Very good. You have to sort of make your own forms and stuff like that. Anyway, very good. Enjoy. Yes, so I was thinking about it. So the reason why, as I mentioned about this event that we went to yesterday evening, I'm perfectly sure that Chantal will chime in and also tell us a bit about it as well. It seemed like a very successful event, and there were some quite impressive names there as well for the launch. So rather than me name drop, it was more about just thinking about the actual animals themselves. And I've spoken about pet bereavements before, which is a big subject, and don't necessarily need to go down that route as well. But it's more about, just for me, I'm sure you know that Russ has a dog as well, but I happen to own a pet dog, and there's nothing that sort of fills me with more, how can I put it? It's just a very warm feeling when you come home at the end of the day and the dog is so happy to see you. I mean, happier than any member of my family I can never remember being to see me. As a result of it, just sort of there is something warm and quite fuzzy about that feeling of sort of being greeted by an animal, just knowing that they are there. Elizabeth Green, for example, has chimed in and said, good morning. Oh, yes, I pass a dog walker every morning. He walks 5 blonde dogs. Good Lord. Blonde dogs, to give them highlights or something. 5 blonde dogs. He lets me do a picture with his previous child. Oh, precious charges. There you go. She's correct herself. There you go. Yes. So did you not grow up with animals, Neil?
I've had dogs. I found a dog actually once. I was driving in my car and I saw this big fluffy thing running down the slip road of the A3 on the pavement. So I pulled over, put him in the car, doing the decent citizenship thing, and turned out that he didn't have a home. His owner had died or something, and he was literally homeless. So we took him. And I have to say, in my life, his name was Tosca. He came in the name Tosca, as in the opera. And I'd never had such a close bond with an animal before. Somehow we were soulmates. I don't know. And when he died, I had him about 2.5 years. I was mortified. And we made the classic. It was a true Alsatian cross, and we made the classic mistake of trying to replicate him, and we got the next one. So we got another Chow Alsatian cross, but they had more of one and less of the other. And you can't replace. That is the biggest mistake you can make. You cannot replace. They're like human beings. They've all got their individual personalities. And I had a cat that was awesome as well. But there was also a cat that used to live next door, and it used to come in here. And it drove me nearly mad. But since then, my daughter's got a cat, and I've fallen sort of back in love a bit with cats again. I know this.
You protest to come up with the bravado as if you're not much of an animal person, but I think deep down you are quite an animal person. There, we've got that. We've sussed that in a few minutes already. Liz Saul,
I don't mind them; they're okay.
You just couldn't eat a whole one. Liz Saul says, I've had cats before now, real characters and loving. My soppy, chatty cat, Thomas, died suddenly 2 years ago, a few months after my mum, and it was devastating. Liz, I'm really sorry to hear that, because honestly, it is a different type of grief, to say the least, when one loses a pet even. And it's I think it's indescribable. If you've never gone through it before, it really is indescribable. It's the only word I can describe is pain. Absolutely unmitigated pain. It's just horrible. I
was mortified when Tosca died. As I said, never had such a close bond with an animal. It was, and you're right, it is. They become part of the family. They literally become as close as a family member. And I know many people that prefer animals to human beings. I know people that really don't like most human beings. And I think if I want people to like me more, I should grow fur and walk on all fours. And
some of us can't grow fur, Neil. So just remember that, you know.
What's that?
I said some of us can't grow fur. Just remember that.
I meant cut it all over.
Good Lord. Paul Claridge says, animals, especially cats and dogs, have got me through some very difficult times. Stroking a cat or a dog has a very therapeutic effect. I agree with this. And animals tend to show unconditional love. Alas, I currently don't have a pet myself, but I have many friends who let me look after their animals and spend time with them. I think it's true, Paul.
You see, dogs, they're very unconditionally loving. You can't really upset them for long. They're always pleased to see you every time you come in. And here's the key thing, difference between dogs and human beings. They don't need you to be any different for them to be happy. There's many human beings that say, I love you if you're this way or that way. Dogs don't care. Like the word was used, unconditional love. That's the thing. They're unconditionally loving. And they don't need you because they're happy already. They kind of radiate it rather than try and get it out of you, as it were.
And isn't it interesting how many people, I don't think in their lifetime, unless they have an animal, realize what unconditional love is? And that's quite a sad thought.
It's wonderful when you experience it.
Definitely.
Or indeed be the source of it yourself, if you can. But you've got to love yourself unconditionally first, otherwise you can't.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And it's very, I actually think it's that is very much easier said than done, you know.
We could do weeks on self-love. We should do a half-hour segment, actually. You know, people that have learned how to successfully love themselves, because it's the key to everything. I think we should do it's totally connected with mental health. I think we should do a segment every week on it, personally. I think it's that important. Love of self is the foundation of everything, in my opinion.
Couldn't agree more. Let's carry on with some of these messages coming in. Elizabeth Green from New York says, New York is divine. They are pet crazy. So many dogs to stroke here. You can just stop people in the street and talk dogs. And that's actually one thing as well that I forgot to mention as well. I quite like the way that pets unite people. It's a bit like sports in some weird way, because even though obviously with sports and one supports a team or another, then obviously if it's an opposing team, well, then there's a bit of banter and possibly a bit of rivalry. But I actually quite like the way that sports, as is animals, are non-political. Well, by and large, they're non-political. I mean, someone forgot to tell the likes of Lewis Hamilton that, but other than that, they're by and large, they're non-political. And it's just quite nice the way that sort of pets can bring people together. You know, it's just a common interest straight away.
It does, and it does unite people. There's a local dog walking group that meet in a local car park, and that unifies a lot of people, which I'd go to.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam Monroe says every animal has its own personality. I have Ziggy. Phil has met him. I have indeed met Ziggy. And Casper the cat. I believe Ziggy is a mini pincher, if my memory serves me right, or a toy pincher, they call them. They love each other so much. I have lost 3 dogs. It is so painful, Sam. I'm so sorry, because I've lost 2 dogs. Goodness knows how many cats and other animals, and it is just beastly. No other words to describe it. Graham Pack has chimed in and says, I have a few old dogs in my time, but thankfully those girlfriends didn't last long.
Oh, Graham, go and stand in the corner. You reprobate.
Very naughty, Graham. Very naughty, but very funny. Julie Voice says, my dog has helped me tremendously. He is the reason I get up every morning. He copes so well with the flight from Houston. Good Lord.
Fantastic. What kind of dog do you have, Julie? Stick it on the screen. Well, the name of it. I mean, not the picture.
Yeah. Yes, the make and model. Asa Don Brown. Good day, all. Sorry for my tardiness. Asa, it's shocking. I love the way people apologize.
It really is, Asa. There's no excuses, I'm afraid.
I love the way people apologize for not necessarily being here for the start of this program. Do you know how programs
really
work? People can dip in and dip out. It's absolutely fine.
And you're welcome anytime, sir.
Absolutely. Asa says, good day all. Sorry for my tardiness. My hands are tied with work today. Well, Ada, you really don't need to apologize. It's very good of you. Thank you so much. And Liz Saul, obviously referencing, I think from before when I was mentioning that some of us can't grow fur. And Liz says, oh, don't worry, Phil. We like you as you are. Liz, you're very kind. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the problem is when you get to 50, the fur starts growing out of your nose. Well, that's what I find anyway.
Oh, don't, isn't it? It's not even 50. I'm telling you, it's revolting. Seriously. Honestly, I've just the other day, I'm ashamed to admit this. This is not necessarily something that I was prepared to talk about on Men's Radio, but seeing as you brought up the subject, I feel that it's important to stress this because no one warns you about this. No one tells you this in childhood, right? The truth is, I have got a horrible suspicion that the roots of my hair have sort of gone from upwards to downwards, and as a result of it, starts sort of sprouting out the nose. I've got some on the ears. I've had to keep sort of plucking away. It's shocking. Why does no one warn you about this?
There's an equal and opposite problem which I have. My hair still grows very fast, but outwards. So I have to keep going back to the barbers to get it cut because someone, a close working colleague, told me that if I don't get it
Neil,
cut, I look like
I don't do this very often. Actually, I do this every single week, to be honest with you. You got to hold the fort, sir, for just a moment. Hold that.
Yeah, sure. My hair grows outwards, and I was told by a close working colleague of mine that I look like a seedy old pervert. Seedy and pervert, I don't mind, but old, I'm simply not having that at all. So, difference that animals are made to your life. Stick it on the screen. Maybe dogs or cats. But, oh yeah, speaking of animals, there's a lady around here. She's an Eastern European lady, and she's quite well known in the New Malden area where I live. And I'm not joking. This is not wind up. She walks a pot-bellied pig on a lead. Pickles, I even know the pig's name. Pickles the pig. Probably tastes nice with pickles. I never said that. Pickles the pig gets walked around the New Malden area, around another part of New Malden. And the other day, in yet another part of New Malden, because it is the hub for most human life, there was a lady sitting down my local with a cat on a lead. A cat on a lead. She like literally taking it for a walk like you would a dog. That was pretty random. The pot-bellied pig is random. And I did see a lady walking a ferret once in Twickenham on a lead. True story.
You see, I live a very sheltered life. I haven't seen anything. I think I've seen a cat on a lead because actually where we used to live, we had one of our neighbours had, I assume the cat's no longer around because it was years ago, but the cat itself was one of those expensive like designer breeds, you know, like sort of the almost like Egyptian cats type thing. And as a result of it, they were terrified about letting it on a lead on its, letting it out and about on its own. So they used to take him for a walk on a lead, which I always used to find fascinating because, of course, up until that point,
it was just so surreal. I just said to the girl, I've never seen this before. And the only other random animal story I've got, it was a guy and he'd adapted a skateboard and he was in our local park. There's like a perimeter around it in concrete, which you can walk around the path. And he'd adapted a skateboard and and he got like a husky dog on the front of it, pulling him along. It was like kind of Santa, but without the Santa on this kind of play thing. And me and this guy, you know, we kind of had to squint. Are we actually seeing this? Are we actually seeing this? Love this from Paul Claridge. Hey, Phil, where's our lovely friend Anna Webb when we need her? I was out with her once when her smallest dog, Mr. Binks, defended her from a leery wolf-whistling builder. As Anna gave the builder a piece of her mind, Mr. Binks peed up his leg.
Brilliant. Can I just... Anna... Oh, sorry. Yes, of course we did. Yes.
We asked Julie what her dog was. He's a lab mixed rescue dog called Roddy. Sorry, over to you.
Excellent stuff. No, sorry. No, I realise there's a slight delay here, so apologies if you think we're talking over each other. That's why I apologise. We are not being ill-mannered. Don't worry, we like each other really. But no, I was going to say that with regards to Anna Webb, who Paul is referring to, you're quite right. Anna has got quite an extraordinary knowledge when it comes to all things pertaining to dogs. So as a result of it, yeah, perfectly right to mention. I think Anna has actually appeared on this very program, if I'm not very much mistaken. Thank you for that.
Couple more comments.
Absolutely.
Asa Don Brown. We have a small farm in New York State. The farm kept us out of danger. I assume that's what you mean. In the pandemic. Liz says having a cat on the lead is not unusual. I used to walk Thomas on a lead.
Wow. Okay.
After 3 minutes, he'd jump up for a cuddle and then sit on my shoulder as I went along. That's typical cat being lazy. I can't be bothered to walk. The farm kept my family sane during the pandemic. I think that's what you meant, sorry. And Linda Dave, anyone familiar, Phil?
Maybe, possibly, somehow.
My dogs and cats have got me through some very difficult times. The loss of my Carlo was beyond heartbreaking. I will miss him forever. They do become part of the family, Linda. I don't know if there's any question about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Carlo in particular, who my mother refers to, we only actually lost in September, so it's still quite recent. And it was just, I can't explain it, but when, and I've got to be careful when I talk about this because I don't want to embarrass myself, but when Carlo came round the night before that we had to have him admitted to the veterinary hospital, my parents came round with Monty as well, our other dog, and Carlo to my place. This was before I had my dog Cassie, because I got her not long after we lost Carlo. And Carlo wasn't himself. He was coughing a lot. And I remember watching I watched several of those animal programs, sort of the animal doctor. Do you remember Animal Hospital? Do you remember that?
The one that Rolf Harris used to present.
Yeah. So it used to be presented. It was presented by Rolf Harris, but there are many incarnations of that since then. Obviously, Animal Hospital is long gone, but probably I assume because of its association. But even so, but there are other versions of it. I just remember watching a documentary or a program like that once, where they were talking about a dog that had been admitted with a cough, but the cough itself wasn't like your typical cough. It was almost like they were choking and couldn't breathe in the process. And I just remember them saying that that's a sign of something wrong with the heart. Don't know why the heck I remembered it. But anyway, said, got to take him to the vets about this. I think it is heart related. And unfortunately, within 2 days, his heart stopped and we lost him. So, it definitely was that. But the only good thing is that even though we weren't with him at the end, I suppose the only good thing is that he wouldn't have been in any discomfort because they put him on oxygen and stuff like that. So that was definitely sort of something. But there was always this guilt that we weren't with him at the end, which I think is, in hindsight, is silly because he would have suffered a lot more if we had have just kept him at home and he couldn't catch his breath, if you think about it.
But that's the rational part of the brain talking in hindsight. When you're in the emotional part of the brain during it, no one thinks particularly logically. I don't believe it's possible to. We have to get our front part of the brain back online before we can say things actually in hindsight it was a lot kinder and all, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, it is. But it also at the time is absolutely shocking as well because as I say, I apologize because I wasn't going to go down the route of actually talking about hair loss, but seeing as it's sort of like has transformed into a conversation about it whilst we are on the subject, I just remember that sort of one of the I would actually go so far as to say sort of one of the worst days of my life really was we had a cat, an amazing cat called Boney. We had several cats in my lifetime, but Boney was just something else. She was an extraordinary animal where she just intuitively knew when she was needed and sort of intuitively knew when you kind of wanted to be left alone. She didn't meow, so because she was very quiet, never caused any disruption or anything like that. Didn't really do anything like claw the furniture. She was just sort of the model cat. I can't explain it. It's literally, I don't think it was anything. She had a bit of a fiery temper on her, so if you annoyed her, she'd let you know. But other than that, a model pet, if ever there was one. Anyway, when the day came when finally we sort of graciously accepted that she had, we knew that she had cancer. She had several operations to remove various tumors, but it was the day that came when she couldn't open her jaw very wide. So she was actually struggling to eat And this was obviously because, unfortunately, the tumor had spread. And so we knew that it was time. But it was actually the case of taking her, myself, to the vet, staying with her whilst the deed was done, bringing her back, and then burying her in the garden. And my father, in those days, not much of an animal lover. He's better than he was. He's better now. He's actually sort of much better with the animals. But at the time, it wasn't his thing at all. My sister, she's never really been much of an animal person. She's quite good with the dogs, but never really with the cats. She didn't bother with them at all. And my mother couldn't deal with it, so it fell upon me to deal with it. And honestly, it was just one of the most horrific days, because you just literally, you sort of went from the emotional exhaustion from the start of it, where you had the sorry, I think I finished my mother off. Sorry, Mum. But you sort of had the emotional
Sending you a virtual hug, Linda.
Yeah. And I'm saying, pull yourself together. But when you have the emotional exhaustion to start the day off, when you kind of know what's coming, but then actually sort of ending it with the actual physical work of sorting out the aftermath as well. It was just horrible from start to finish, and probably something that's sort of scarred me forever. But it's unbelievable to sort of think that is as a result of having so many wonderful years with an amazing pet. You know, that's the end. Do you know what I mean? And that's the lasting image.
It's a difficult one. I suppose that's when we say about human beings, I want to remember them as they were and put it in the fond memory box. But it is difficult, and it is a real grief. There's no question about it. Grief has got a lot bigger for me over the years. Not necessarily I've experienced it more, but my definition of it has broadened. Yeah, of course we can grieve an animal, but people can also grieve a lost job. People can grieve a lost anything. And grief is very real and necessary, I would say. Not fun, but necessary, because it can renew you eventually and get you ready for new beginnings once you've been through the process, horrendous that the process is.
Actually, do you know, that's really interesting that you say that, because the grief can take many forms. And I tell you why. Because I find myself recently, and this might sound a bit strange, so we'd steer the conversation ever so slightly in a different direction when I say this, but I find that I'm grieving for the country I remember when I grew up. England has changed, or the UK has changed, really. Actually, no. Do you know what? The world has changed. Let's be honest. I think it's anywhere you go in the world has changed beyond such recognition. I mean, could you just imagine 20, 30 years ago saying that radio programs would be done like this, as they are, video links, and not from a studio? I mean, I know they are still done from a studio by and large, but it is possible now to do them, obviously, over video links, is what we do. But could you also imagine the way that people would be struggling to get their heads around definition of different genders, for example? And I know full well that this is a very sensitive subject we don't necessarily need to go down the route of, but what I'm trying to get at is that one shouldn't underestimate how damaging that is becoming on successive generations, you know, where the generations before had a very clear understanding in their minds of what was what. Now we're being told what you've actually thought all along is wrong and you need to rethink. It's now causing confusion for the next generation as they struggle to come to terms with who they might be and who they are and who they're not. It's things like this, you know, life seems far more complicated. And I find myself, if you like, mourning for a world which used to be, I think, quite simple, or at least simpler.
I could not agree more. I need to add more meat to the bone there. Yes, I agree. I do find myself going back when I'm feeling nostalgic to days of my childhood and thinking life was so rose-tinted and perfect, or so I thought back then. But perhaps I had lesser understanding of some of the less pleasant things that go on in the world. And as I grow older, it's like, oh no, there's a mix of this and that. You know, there's good and not so good. And I think certainly some changes are for the better. I think we're moving in the right direction. If you look back, over the course of human evolution, I think we're slowly moving in the right direction, even if it wouldn't seem so at times. And I think there's reason to be hopeful, certainly. But certainly with the gender thing, I'm not saying anything to offend anyone here, because I would have the same difficulty with it myself. But when I was growing up, there was three. It was, straight, gay, or bi, and that was it. Actually, well,
I feel that rather than gender, that's more sexuality, isn't it? So and this is part of the confusion, isn't it? Because what do we mean when we say gender? Because I mean, to some, gender is either masculine or feminine. And unfortunately, sort of now that's been blurred quite a lot, where, you know, some people say that they're gender fluid, so it actually depends on what they feel like on the day, whether they're masculine or feminine. And then there are others who they describe themselves as non-binary, where that means that they don't really sort of conform to either gender. They just sort of see themselves as an individual. There's all of these different sort of ways of thinking, which just blow the mind, to be honest. And I'm not sure how can I put it? I'm not sure I think it's that helpful, to be honest, because whereas it might be a good thing for those who go through gender confusion, it seems to be causing an awful lot more upset and dis-ease, if you like, within sort of other sections of society, the majority of society who maybe once didn't have this kind of confusion, if you see what I mean.
I understand. It's I think everyone's got a right to be exactly who they want to be. I think everyone deserves to be accepted for who they are. All of that good stuff, 100%. But I agree that it is complex. Yeah, most certainly. And I'm sure people in any of these so-called categories, not that I like labeling people, would agree. It is complex. I've had conversations with people in some of these, again, so-called categories, and I say, right, explain it to me, and they do, and it's interesting, but it's nothing that I would have encountered when I was growing up. It's a completely new point of view, one that I accept and encourage. Totally cool. It's just different to me.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I encourage it or I don't encourage it, to be honest. I believe in live and let live more than anything. You know, if someone wants to live their life in a certain way, then that's great. Go for it. I'm very happy for you. Thank goodness we live in a world where, by and large, people can live their lives the way they want to. I recognize not everywhere in the world is like that.
That's an improvement over the years too.
Yeah. But I would suggest that I do sort of think, by and large, we're quite lucky with the day and age in which we live to have that kind of freedom. However, there are a couple of footnotes to that. I don't think you can argue too much with biology, if I'm honest. You know, science, science is there to prove things when it suits people and when it doesn't suit them. And I think that if we don't rely on one particular source of stability, science is kind of proven to be that, you know. And it's a bit unnerving when people turn around and say, well, no, the science is wrong, when they're not scientists, if you see what I mean. Well, actually, I hate to tell you, but no, it's not. You might not like what you hear, but it's not wrong. You know, you kind of can't argue with science. Science has sort of proven that, if you like. So there are things that sort of get in the way of making things easier than, or as easy as they think they should be. But look, hopefully I wonder whether or not sort of the biggest problem is that because we're going through this period of mass change in societal attitudes, that maybe that's why so many people are struggling to come to terms with it. And who knows, maybe successive generations will find it much easier, hopefully. So any odd way, how about sort of just rattle one or two other messages that have crept in, and then we shall bring on the screen queen herself, who is looking remarkably fresh-faced, considering I feel rougher than a badger's backside. But anyway, let's not dwell on that too much. Fat Scotty has said, good afternoon, gents. Sat in the garage, awaiting, good Lord, awaiting the return of my car that disgraced itself on the A5. That's very unfortunate. How did it disgrace itself? Let's have a look and see. Paul Claridge says, oh guys, can we send a loving shout out to my friend Michelle? She runs her own charity called Dogs on the Streets. Bravo. She does so much that help the homeless and their pets, and I've just heard that she has had to let her own sweet little dog Ben take the journey over the Rainbow Bridge. Well, I'm very, very sorry to hear that, Paul, and obviously sorry for Michelle as well. Graham Pack says that our dog died 15 years ago, and we had him cremated and put in a box instead of. Let's have a see. I'm hoping you're not. We're going to be inappropriate here, Graham. Instead of burying the box. I see. It's on our shelf in my office upstairs. Yep. Which is ironic, as he wasn't allowed upstairs when he was alive.
I like that. Very good.
Yeah, dear.
And Fat Scotty, dogs are so happy to see you with unconditional love, whereas cats look at you with such disdain. True that. #truth. They absolutely do.
Absolutely. And he goes on to say that dogs are only with you for part of your life, but you are their whole life. I've heard that expression before. It's so true. They're better than some of the family I have. I'm sorry, I
This
don't
is
know
the
your
thing. Some
family, but
people
I agree with
prefer
that.
animals to human beings. I think that's relatively common, actually.
And then just to finish with Ace, Don Brown, he says, Phil, I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you so much. I don't know what you agree with, but I'll keep going. I just finished an article on change. Yeah, he says, while we have always experienced some form of change, it seems to be on overdrive at the moment. I agree. Yeah, completely.
Yes, absolutely. It seems to be accelerating, doesn't it? And I think that's discombobulating a lot of people as well. I mean, change is the nature of life, for sure. But sometimes it just seems so fast that it's just like, whoa, what is happening here? I guess it'll all come out in the wash and we'll come out bigger, stronger and more badass than we were before. So, and conversations like this can provide a healing balm along the way, we would hope.
Indeed. And speaking of bigger, stronger and badass, here is the marvelous Chantal Rickards.
Did you see how I did that? That incredible way I used those words so you could use them in the intro. Did you see that?
Uncanny link there. That was amazing.
That into your intro.
Minutes of preparation went into that. Minutes, I tell you. Hello,
absolutely. Chantal. And without further ado, we should acknowledge really the reason why we're here. I do enjoy whenever we all bounce around like that. It always reminds me of the Muppet Show open for some reason. But anyway, so it seems appropriate somehow. Chantal, how the devil are you feeling? Because I'm not going to lie, I'm a weeny bit delicate this morning.
I am equally delicate today.
Yes,
I have resorted to the paracetamol bottle. Because I'm a little fuzzy-headed this morning. It's all your fault. I'm blaming you for the whole lot.
I haven't gone to that degree yet, but my fault, excuse me. Hang on just a cotton-picking second. I don't recall being the one saying after we'd finished at the event last night, the bar's still open, you know. But anyway. So,
great. Hang on. Have you two been out on the town and not invited me?
Well... We got the yes.
Chantal, all yours.
Next time.
Where was my invite as part of the team?
We were out supporting dogs last night. That's what we were doing. We were being very...
You both deserve the hangovers that you've got.
Thanks. It's punishment. Karma is very cruel. Now, it has to be said.
Last glass of red wine at BAFTA was a bad idea.
Oh, gracious me. Why on earth did I even think of having a large glass of wine after? It was a good idea. Anyway, I got caught up in the moment. The salmon would have been more than enough. Anyway, right. I should stress as well that just in case you missed the start of the show, by the way, that what we are talking about. Oh, and also my mother says me too. How can you say me too? You didn't drink. Goodness sake. The only hangover you've got is lack of sleep. Anyway.
So your mum was invited as well. I'm feeling very unloved here.
Don't worry, Russ wasn't there.
Last time I met the founder member of the Phil Dave fan club, which was very exciting.
Who's that then?
Still its only surviving member, believe me.
I see what you mean. Yeah, got it.
Oh dear.
So, Spring Queen.
Yeah, okay, so can we just sort of say very quickly what happened to those who did miss out last night? Sorry, that it was as I mentioned at the start of the program, it was the launch event for the National Foundation of Retired Service Animals, and it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, just some of the names that were there goes to show that we are by and large a nation of animal lovers. And what I particularly liked as well is the way that animals seem to unite what can only be described as the upper echelons of society and us mere common folk. So it was really lovely to sort of see that same enthusiasm and actually realize that if you don't go shooting and you don't eat haggis, you actually have got things in common. So it was quite nice.
Indeed. And there were 6 German Shepherd puppies who completely stole the show. So it was fun. It was a good evening. And I think we managed to raise some money for the charity, which has just started. I mean, it was the official launch night of the charity and there were some fun people there. So thank you for coming, Phil. And thanks to Linda too.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for the invite. Right, okay, now we need to stop absolutely rubbing Neil's nose in it, and instead we should talk all things screen. So there you go. Graham Pack says, "Is there one for retired service broadcasters?"
Well, I'll be in it very quickly.
Yeah, I hate to tell you, I think that's called a pension, but anyway, they are quite looked after, to the best of my knowledge. Anyway, yes. So, Chantal, what is it that has caught your
So
eye? What are you going to delight us with?
you mentioned Graham Pack, and actually, Graham has sent me a couple of ideas for shows that I might like, and he seems to beginning to get to know me quite well, because the two ideas that he sent me recently, I've rattled through them and I thought they were really good. So the first one I wanted to talk about was something called The Offer, which not everybody will get, but if you can get Paramount Plus, you absolutely should. Because The Offer is about the making of The Godfather. The Godfather, I think we're back to 1972. We're sort of about the 50th anniversary since The Godfather. It has been described as the second most successful American film ever, the first being Citizen Kane. But it was certainly a massive financial success. I think it cost about $6 million to make, $6 or $7 million to make, and it grossed over 250 million.
Oh,
and this is in the 1970s. So it was an extraordinary success. But it's sort of, in a way, the stars aligned, but it was not an easy journey. And the mafia didn't want the book to go ahead. The book, of course, was about a family called the Corleones, based in New York. And they were a mafia family, no doubt about it. So there were a lot of people who did not want Mario Puzo's book turning into a movie. The Italian-American society didn't want it happening. The studio thought that it was going to be a complete failure. And there were people inside Paramount Studio who were trying to stop it.
Quite miraculous this happened at all, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. Frank Sinatra didn't want it happening. I mean, it was an absolute mess and a muddle, but ended
That's
up
just because he wanted it his way.
Anyway. Yeah, exactly. But it was an extraordinary film. There ended up being a trilogy of Godfather films. It gave us people like Al Pacino that we had never seen on our screens before. He was a theatre actor before that. So you basically get the whole story from the original producer coming in, who's a guy called Al Ruddy, who's just come off a sitcom called Hogan's Heroes. Quite why they thought the guy who'd made the sitcom Hogan's Heroes could suddenly make a feature movie about the New York mafia is, beyond comprehension. Matthew Good.
Do we know what went on in his private life, though? Because with a name like Al, just saying he could have been.
Well, honestly, he's played by Miles Teller, who I think is a fantastic actor anyway, who's recently been in Top Gun Maverick and was the lead in Whiplash in 2014. He's a wonderful, wonderful actor. Matthew Good from Downton Abbey plays the head of the studio, Bob Evans, who was the husband of Ally McGraw, very famous film actress from the 1970s and 80s. So you see the casting process, you see how they get the money together, how the scripts come together. But the whole time there is this underlying threat about, will the film ever actually get made? Because so many people don't want it to happen. Even the FBI get involved because there are death threats towards the production team. It's brilliant. It's a 10-part series. I'm only on episode 4, I think, but I am absolutely loving it. The critics weren't sort of quite convinced, but if you look at what the sort of people's choice, as it were, on something like Rotten Tomatoes, everybody thought it was brilliant. So
and where is this playing, Chantal?
It's on Paramount Plus. Now, I've got a Sky feed at home, and I've got Paramount Plus on my Sky feed. So it is, you can get it in the UK on some of the packages. So see if you've got Paramount Plus. If not, try Paramount Plus out for a week.
I was going to say, I just wanted to say that you can actually sort of work around this somehow, because Paramount Plus is a streaming service like any other. So you don't have to have Sky to watch it. You can get it through smart televisions, but also it's worth noting that I think you can get it online as well. You can watch Paramount Plus online if you want. As Chantal says, if you don't have a subscription, try it a week for free, because then you'd at least be able to see the series. But it does actually come with a lot of Sky subscriptions. So if you have Sky, it's more than likely you will actually have the ability to register for Paramount Plus for free. So
absolutely right. And Graham Pack also said that after he'd watched The Offer, he then went on to watch the 3 movies. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, because it's 50 years since I saw them. I can remember seeing The Godfather as a teenager and being very shocked by it, because it was X-rated at the time. And I was definitely underage. I think I was about 14. And I remember the horse's head scene so vividly. And clearly I shouldn't have been watching a movie that was, made for adults. And I was a vulnerable teenager who's never forgotten that scene.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, it's almost like they know what they're doing and they give these movies certain ratings. But yes.
Exactly. There's a reason for it.
And just look how far you've come, though, Chantal, from watching a headless horse at the age of 14 to working for a charity that actually sort of protects the horses in retirement. So that's much better.
Indeed.
Full circle.
Absolutely. Now, Sam Monroe has chimed in to say, I am only now watching Breaking Bad. OMG, it's fantastic.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's such a brilliant series. And Bryan Cranston is fantastic. Aaron Paul. Yes. Cranston, came from sitcoms, really. That was what he was known for in America.
Wasn't he Malcolm in the Middle?
Yeah, he was the dad in Malcolm in the Middle.
Exactly.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Obviously has become a much more serious actor, and he's very, very good in Breaking Bad. And Aaron Paul wasn't really very well known before Breaking Bad, but actually the two of them coming together just worked so well. It's a brilliant
Who's
series.
the guy that plays Hank, the DEA agent? What's his name?
Oh, God.
Anna Gunn plays Bryan Cranston's wife.
Correct.
Hank is played by...
Hank is played by Henry Schrader, is it?
No, Hank Schrader's the name, his name in the thing.
Oh, I see. I beg your pardon. Dean Norris, it says here.
Dean Norris, that's it. He was in before, because I watched this, what were they in before in Breaking Bad? And he was in, I think it was Total Recall, when Arnold Schwarzenegger, the big star, walks into some kind of bar where there's all these kind of weird, freaky aliens. It's all sort of alien. And the guy turns around. Dean Norris is wearing some sort of face mask, and there's a clever line between them, which I can't remember exactly now, but it did seem quite a bit part compared to the big part that he had in Breaking Bad. What was the line? It's something like, you've got a lot of face coming in here, and he says, look who's talking, or something like that, because he's all deformed. It's cleverer than that, but it's something like that.
Speaking of, sorry, Chantal.
No, I was going to say some clever soul will look it up for us and hopefully write it.
Sure. It's a clever line. It's like, you've got a lot of face coming in here. Well, look who's talking. It's something like that, but cleverer.
There was, speaking of only just watching something now, I've decided to try and give it another go at the morning show on Apple TV Plus, because so many people who rave about it, and I tried, and I don't know whether or not I just maybe didn't give it a fair chance. I've got through the first episode, and I must admit, watching it back for a second time, I can sort of see why it's certainly very well made. There's no disputing that. But I think it's more about whether or not is it for me. And I think I know what the problem is just there is a little bit too much swearing in it for my liking, because call me old-fashioned, but I just don't see a point. I really, really don't see a point of putting sort of foul-mouthed language into a drama when it's actually been written in. So I can almost understand it when people go around in everyday life swearing their head off out of frustration. I kind of almost get that, because that's the emotion. But it's when you know that it has been deliberately written in for the effect, and that's what I'm not so sure I like too much. So I'm not the biggest fan of sort of foul mouth in drama. However, if you put that to one side, I can definitely see it's a very well put together program. So I'll watch episode 2. I'll take it from there and see how I progress. But it's the morning show on Apple TV Plus, and you can also tell that I've recently got a new Apple device, which gives me 3 months free of Apple TV Plus. So I thought I might as well try it. So.
Well, there's lots on Apple to catch up with over your 3-month free trial, so that's a good thing to do. Anyway, Absolutely. But you're right. Certainly dramas are, I think I said last week and the week, possibly the week before, that dramas to me are becoming more risque, both in terms of sexual content and in terms of the use of bad language. So, and that's quite interesting. That seems to me it's a bit of a sea change that's going on at the moment.
But isn't it bizarre when you think of it, that it wasn't that long ago that sort of we just thought someone kissing on screen was risque. How much more can they do? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
How much further
Yes,
can
that
this
woman
go?
showed her ankle. It's disgusting and immoral.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was watching Gogglebox on at the weekend, which I absolutely loved, the program on Channel 4, which is called The People's Sofa in other parts of the world, where you have families, regular, just normal families, sitting watching telly. And they were watching one of the families. Well, in fact, all of the families had been set the task to watch the second episode of Obsession, which I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, with Richard Armitage. Very, very, very full-on sexual content. And actually, it's very good when you watch Gogglebox, because you do get the view of the man in the street. And they were all shocked to their core about how high the sexual content of that program was. So it wasn't just me feeling slightly oversensitive about it. I think a lot of people are thinking the same thing. Anyway, we'll see what the viewers are like.
Paul Claridge says, read the new Adam Driver movie, 65. There's 90 plus minutes I won't get back. Don't waste your money. Oh dear. The major twist in the plot is so well signposted and easy to guess by 20 minutes in that the only mystery was when the twist was actually going to be revealed. Oh dear.
Oh dear. That's a pity. Well, I love Adam Driver. He's a great actor, nice man. And
good news for you, Paul. You won't have to have any splinters removed. Well done. So. Now, Chantal, anyway, what else has caught your eye?
Yeah, I thought I ought to give us something from ITV, only because everybody can get ITV pretty much, except our overseas audience, but they will probably get it on BritBox if they've got BritBox in the US particularly. ITV have got very good at taking factual pieces of news that have happened and then turning them in to fact-based dramas, but very good dramatizations. The latest one is about an awful killing that happened in 2010 in Northumberland, and it's called Raoul Moat. I think it's called The Hunt for Raoul Moat. Raoul Moat was a guy who flipped his lid. He came out of jail. He knew that his ex-girlfriend, with whom he had a child, was seeing somebody else. She knew that he was dangerous and told him that she was going out with a policeman because she felt that this would prevent him coming around and attacking her. Well, in actual fact, it had in many ways the opposite effect, because he then went on a rampage. Having killed her boyfriend, he went on a rampage, killing policemen. There is a lot of information in it. It's very understated. It's extremely well done. And the sensationalist bits are sort of very muted. And actually, it's much more about the impact on the families. So
I've seen it.
You've seen it.
What did you think? I've seen it, and I completely agree with you. I think you've articulated it beautifully. Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Yes, and I think it needs to be understated, because I think hyping something like that would be very crass and distasteful, wouldn't it? I thought the actor that played Raoul Moat was extremely well cast as well.
Yes, he was. Actually, he's not an actor I know. I didn't know his work well, but he is very good. And I think it was better because I didn't recognize him from other roles. So he was very well cast in it. Anyway, it's a 3-parter. If you want a quick binge over the weekend and you like real life dramas turned into dramatic form, it's pretty good. And it's on ITV, and it's called The Hunt for Raoul Moat. It is what it is, but fun.
Excellent stuff. So that's on ITV or ITV.
That's ITV. Yeah. And in fact, ITV have also rolled out another brand new drama this week, completely different. It's called Malpractice. And
I've seen that advertised. I haven't seen it, though.
Yeah. Well, I've caught up with the first 1.5 episodes. Niamh Algar, an Irish actress, very, very good Irish actress, plays the lead. She's an overworked doctor in A&E. There is a case where somebody dies right at the beginning of it, and life begins to get utterly chaotic. There are lots and lots of sort of nefarious backstories that come into play. The producer of Line of Duty was part of this, the production team, and the guy who was the cameraman on Boiling Point, the Stephen Graham film from last year. So there's a lot of sort of handheld work. You feel that rush of energy in the accident and emergency department. And there are lots of very, very good characters who are very well portrayed. but it really shows you the pressure that people in A&E are under. Most particularly, this was post-COVID, but the story of COVID is weaved into it. And you feel actually genuinely really sorry for all of those people working in A&E, and indeed the people who come in who are unwell. I think it's going to be really good. I'm really looking forward to it. It's a 5-parter. They're all up there on the ITVX player at the moment. So I'm going to try and rattle through that over the weekend, that's for sure.
Do you think sometimes, though, Chantal, that it's almost like we live in a day and age where television production has just got to the most ridiculous degree of competition? I was watching, for example, I think I mentioned a few weeks back how I was not rewatching actually, I've never actually seen it myself before, but episodes of Hetty Wainthropp Investigates. Okay, so very light-hearted, very simple program that I'm sure at the time entertained the masses, and actually kind of got audience figures, from what I can understand, that people nowadays can only dream of. And yet it seems the production's now far more complicated and more has to go into making them happen. Do you ever think there's an argument to be had that maybe we just need to go back to a simpler point in time when it comes to TV production?
Well, I mean, it's a very good question. I'm not sure that there's any going back. I mean, what will dictate that is money. And if people aren't getting the viewing figures and they're not selling advertising off the back of it, or they're not selling subscriptions off the back of it, they'll either reduce the output and not make as many series, or they'll make cheaper series. But generally, we're now so used to really good scripts, great acting, lots of money on screen, that I think it would be very difficult to go back to the days of, the
simpletons, of Simple Life, as it were.
I think so. I think so. We'll see. But I mean, at the moment, if you look at the Netflix stuff that's coming out, they are still throwing money onto the screen. Most of the stuff that's coming out, whether it's good or bad, has got very high production qualities. So a lot of money is being spent on the look and the styling and the editing, and anyway, it's fascinating. And people are making longer and longer films, which actually I don't understand at all, because I don't think people want to sit through a 2.5-hour or 3-hour film.
It seems so counterintuitive when you think we live in especially a day and age where actually people's attention spans are diabolical. I mean, literally, you could just sort of flick through stuff now on social media, and I believe that you see clips of things that are about literally 5 seconds. It's because it's almost like that's all people can cope with, and yet they're making films that are longer. It doesn't seem to really make sense, really.
Yeah. The new, I was going to mention the new Netflix series, which is top of the ratings at the moment, called The Diplomat. People are describing it as, is it possibly the new West Wing? It's a bit sort of Aaron Sorkin-esque, Aaron Sorkin having written The West Wing, which is one of the most successful political dramas. And The Diplomat, it features Kerry Russell, who was in The Americans, if you saw that. And she's a good American actress, and she is the new American ambassador to the United Kingdom. She is married, but in the middle of a marriage breakdown, to Rufus Sewell, who has also been an American diplomat, but he is older. His diplomatic life is over, but nobody's quite told him that he's no longer relevant. And the two of them arrive in London to take up the role of, for her to take up the role of ambassador. A lot of money has been spent on this, a lot. It does feel as rich as something like West Wing, but added to that, you've got lots of exterior scenes, you've got helicopters landing. There's a whole thing going on. Very expensive. I don't know how much they spent on it, but I'm going to look it up. But I think it's going to be really good. I've watched the first 2 episodes, and Rufus Sewell is a very convincing American, I'm pleased to report, and Kerry Russell is terrific, and everybody's saying it's probably the best thing that she's ever done. So have a look at it. It's a rollicking political thriller, the backstory of family and what else is going on. But I think it's going to be really, really good. So I
finally recently rewatched Victoria, which is a drama based on Queen Victoria's early years. And Rufus Sewell played Lord Melbourne in Victoria. And so it's hilarious to think he's gone from this prim and proper British gent who basically was almost best buddies with Queen Victoria to thinking now that he's playing an American on screen. It just seems quite far removed, but maybe it goes to show the versatility of the actor.
Yeah, that was fascinating. I mean, Kerry Russell played very well against Matthew Rhys, the Welsh actor, in The Americans. And, you know, of course, when you cast like that, you're dragging in a British audience and you're dragging in an American audience. So it's, you know, this is what the studios do to make sure that something is going to play on both sides of the Atlantic. And people are going to feel comfortable knowing the actors on screen. So,
Neil, do you give much time to the screen?
Me?
Yes.
I binge if something captures my. I've got loads of things that I've started and I need to go and get back into. If I go into Netflix now, you'll see I've watched a bit and a half of that and 3 of that and 2 of that, and I need to kind of go and get back. But honestly, if I did, I would spend my whole life watching, albeit very good drama, but I would spend my whole life doing it, and I do have a couple of other bits to do, like this.
Okay. Well, there's lots out there. I'm really looking forward to going to see the film this weekend about Nike, which is about the making of the Nike Air. I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to tell everybody about it, but I think from what I've heard from all my friends in Hollywood that it's going to be one of the ones to watch and could potentially be something that they'll still be talking about in awards season, but we'll wait and see. But if you want a good comedy, and again, this is Graham Pack's recommendation, he dropped me a note yesterday, I think, and said, have you seen Colin from Accounts? What a ridiculous
I've
title.
heard about
it sounds really terrible. And I was thinking, okay, I'll sit down and watch the first episode. And I've rattled through 4 back to back.
Netflix.
It's an Australian comedy. If you like Catastrophe, I don't know if you remember Catastrophe with Sharon Horgan and Rob Delaney, who were a sort of mismatched couple, American, Irish, who come together and it turns into a romance, really, a sort of, you know, a drama comedy romance. This feels a little bit like that.
Where's it playing?
Where it's on the BBC, but it is made in Australia for a channel I've never heard of called Binge, which is a pretty good
channel. The actual channel's called that.
The channel is called Binge. Who knew? But anyway, there we are. But we've now got it on the BBC iPlayer.
The channel that has delusions of grandeur, the fact that no one's ever heard of it. But anyway.
Exactly. But there are 8 episodes, and it's all, if you love dogs, and Phil, I know that you love dogs. If you love dogs, you will love this, because this mismatched couple of a young medical student and a slightly older, slightly grumpier bloke who works in a brewery come together because he runs over a dog. Don't worry, the dog doesn't die. He runs over a dog, and so they have.
I was going to say, what are you doing to me? Are you sure?
No, the dog doesn't die. But it's very cute. So all dog lovers will completely love it.
I'm pleased you clarified that. I don't think I would have liked that very much. Have you got any quick fire suggestions for us?
It's really, really sparkly. Well, you could try on Apple TV, if you haven't seen it yet, the new Jennifer Garner series. Her husband goes missing in 5 minutes into episode 1. It's on Apple TV and it's called The Last Thing He Told Me. And she is matched up with his slightly cranky teenage daughter. She's the stepmom, and they go on a journey to find the dad. The first 2 episodes are good, and it's being well reviewed. So you could try that, Apple TV, The Last Thing He Told Me.
Marvelous stuff. And I think we've got time for one more. So any other quick fire?
Slightly weird one. And if you don't like it, switch off, don't go to it. But again, a lot of people are talking about something called Daisy Jones and the Six on Amazon. It's about a pop group in the 1970s. Again, totally mismatched people. It's loosely based on, oh my God, which band was it? It'll come to me. I can't remember. But it's quite well-rounded, quite well played, with Sam Claflin as the lead in it. Have a look, see if you like it. I haven't quite decided if I'm loving it or loathing it. No, I'm not loathing it. I like it, but I don't know if I love it. But that's on Amazon.
Oh, apparently, according to this, Daisy Jones and the Six is loosely based on Stevie Nicks.
Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there you go. Marvelous
Exactly
stuff. Chantal, thank you so much. Thank you
listen,
for your
no worries.
hospitality yesterday evening. Thank you for making me feel like death today. I really appreciate that.
Yes, and thank you for the invitation last night.
Yeah.
Next time, Neil. Next time.
He's getting very grumpy.
I'm kidding. Lovely to, I don't often get to see you because I normally only do Monday or Wednesday. So it's been lovely to see you again, Chantal.
Well, good. I've got good news for you, Neil. You got it all over again next week as well.
Indeed.
So there you go.
And
So that's brilliant. Have yourself a great weekend. Thank you, Chantal. I'll see you soon. Thank you for your recommendations.
Thanks,
There
Chantal.
we go. Right. So, well, there you go. Longy, we've made it through.
We made it through another one.
Absolutely. So we'll see. You'll be back on Monday. So
Monday
please
at
do
midday.
absolutely tune in at midday for then. And you and I will be reunited once more next Friday, hopefully at midday. But whatever you're up to,
I look forward to it. And if I'm not here, Russ will be. So
marvelous
no
stuff.
viewers will be let down in any way. Okay. Have a nice weekend, Phil. Good working with you again, buddy.
Likewise.